All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's NASCAR '07 Busch Series race at the Kansas Speedway. 6 races to go, 6 straight nights of NASCAR '07, and we'll end up crowning a champion on Saturday night. As for today, 200 laps, 300 miles around this mile-and-a-half racetrack. Clint Boyer's backyard, of course. He was born in Emporia, Kansas. This is his home track. He never got a win at his home track in the Cup Series level. I don't know about in the Busch Series or not if he did. But this is a Busch Series race, obviously. We're going to try to get him in the championship. Currently coming in with an 89-point lead from where we left off on Thursday of last week. And in the last race, as I'm pulling up my season stats, we did win the last 2, in fact, at Richmond and Dover in the short tracks. 4th place finish at California last week, and a first at Bristol. So first, 4th, 1st, and 1st in the 4 races we had last week on the channel. And again, 6 races to round things out. We got Kansas tonight, Charlotte tomorrow, Old Spice Speedway on Wednesday, or Thursday, excuse me. And then, wait, hang on, I'm getting my days mixed up. Yeah, I had it right, Wednesday. So we got Kansas tonight, Charlotte tomorrow, Wednesday night, Old Spice Speedway, our second and final road course race of the season, and that's also the last fantasy track race of the year as well. And then we finish things off Thursday at Texas, Friday at Phoenix, Saturday at Homestead for the championship. 1 week after, of course, championship weekend, to the day, in fact, for at least the Busch, or now called the Xfinity Series. Corbin Butler, Ryan Berwick, thanks for tuning in. You guys are the first in the chat below. Did not practice. Car's going to hold up. I'm going to go for broke here on this very first run. I'm going to use this looser setup. If it's too loose on the later going into the run, we're obviously going to make some adjustments. So maybe a little bit of guessing game, I guess, as far as to how we're going to have the setup for this. I haven't ran at Kansas Speedway on this season, so it's been a minute since we've been here with this car. But obviously the intermediate tracks, again, not my strong suit. We should be capable of trying to win the race. We have won some intermediate tracks, at least at the Busch Series level. The Truck Series, I didn't win a single mile-and-a-half track. Look back at the mile-and-a-halves that we've had in the Busch Series season. Let's see here. Vegas, we won that one. Atlanta, 41st. That was not good. Texas, we finished 1st. Charlotte, we finished 4th. Chicagoland, 4th. And I believe that was the last mile-and-a-half we've had so far. So, again, this is our first trip to Kansas. So, see how it goes. Tony Stewart qualified 3rd. Jimmy Johnson is on the pole for this. Wade and Billy Kramer, thanks for tuning in also. All right. Get ready to rock and roll here. Green flag in the air. We're underway already. Boyer's getting split 3 wide middle on the opening lap. Barely stays in front of the 22 of Kenny Wallace. I did not think they were going to split around me like that. Only Hornaday was able to get through and get clear. I'm just slow on the takeoff speed on the intermediate tracks. And sometimes on the super speedways. Sometimes I get too good of a launch on the super speedways. I bump draft the car ahead of me and that slows me down and I really can't get going, but it's kind of hit or miss. Already some smoke on the back straightaway after lap 1. No caution for it, though. Jimmy Johnson led lap 1 in this race. Tony Stewart going a bit wide through turns 3 and 4. Boyer slips to the inside of Aaron Crocker for 3rd. Side by side there. And now Boyer to the inside of Tony Stewart for 2nd, down towards turn 1. Stewart's probably going to try to hit us. No, he didn't. All right, thank goodness. Thank goodness he did not try to hit us. And Boyer's going for the lead off turn 2. Quick little side draft of Johnson. Crocker's going to be able to get by Tony Stewart, it appears, as well. All right, there we go. 2.5 laps to go from 4th to 1st. I'll take it. Now we'll see how many of these things we can lead. Hopefully it's enough to get the max points day, and hopefully Tony Stewart doesn't lead a lap. He got to 2nd quickly, but then fell back to 3rd yet again, and it's where he runs right now. Whoops. A little wide off of turn 2. Man, more smoke off turn 4 the last lap. What's going on in the back of the pack? Might get a caution here in the early going. They keep doing what they're doing back there. Might get some cars with damage and get some debris yellows or something too. I think California on the last intermediate track we had 6 cautions, so just you never know how this is going to play out. It seems like we either get a lot or we hardly get any, if any at all. Especially as of late. Yeah, I should win my work league again. I'm up by almost 30 points. I forget who he has left today. Oh, Jalen Waddle. So it is possible that I lose, but I'm going to lean towards not. I know Tyreek Hill, when I checked this morning, was a game time decision. If he doesn't play, I think that's going to hurt me because that's going to give him more of a chance to try to score 30 points because then he's just going to be the go-to guy. As far as my other league that I'm 5-4 in, I'm down by, I think, 11 points, and I have Tyreek Hill and Devon Achane left. I should win. They should make up 11 points. But yeah, all in all, I'm doing pretty good in fantasy football this year. That league, I'm 2 games out of first, and the other one I'm in first by 2 games, so. Keep her going. I can feel this car getting loose already. Having a hard time trying to turn into the corner. It seems like it's more loose on entry. Like it turns way too freely. It was kind of loose all the way around in qualifying. But I've noticed it feels a little too free on entry. I get to the center of the corner and then it rolls fine. I'd rather be loose on entry than loose on exit, because if you're loose on exit, that's going to really cut into your straightaway speed. You're not able to hold a steady wheel. The problem with loose on entry is, I mean, in the case that we get too loose, we could get somebody tight on our rear spoiler and suck the air right off of the back bumper, and around we go that way. So at best, I'm trying to keep some distance between us and second, but we don't seem to have that pull away speed, which I kind of figured considering I didn't qualify on the pole. Last night's game was so bad until the end. That was probably the sloppiest game you guys could have played and still won. Honestly, though, it was sloppy on both teams. It wasn't just Detroit. It was sloppier mainly because of Goff. I mean, it didn't really seem like anybody else offensively was playing bad. It seemed like the offensive line in the first half, because I watched that entire game, Detroit's offensive line looked slow. The entire first half, like they couldn't run. They'd maybe get a 5-yard carry here and there, but they really couldn't run. So it was putting more pressure on Goff, and Goff just wasn't performing. Second half, Goff still wasn't really performing at his best, but he stepped it up a little bit. And yeah, it's hard to have 5 interceptions in one game and still win. But that's a credit to the defense for holding them down. I know Houston's offense has been struggling because I got C.J. Stroud on my fantasy team, and this 4 weeks in a row now, he has not put up some very good numbers for me. And Tyreek Hill and Devon Achane can't make up the other 11 points tonight. He's going to cost me another win, because there was another week he only scored me 3 points. They lost by like 19. I'm not saying that I would have won, necessarily. Like 20 points is a really good game in fantasy for a quarterback because they just don't score as much, but 3 points definitely wasn't going to cut it. And then this week, I think he only scored me 8 or 9. He was playing good the first, 5-6 games that they played. Once they played Green Bay and he only had like 81 yards of passing against the Packers, ever since then, this 4 weeks in a row now that Houston's offense is just, they've been stifled. Caution for the first time today. At least Tony Stewart got back into second around Aaron Crocker. I figured we were going to get an early yellow. We saw some smoke around the racetrack multiple times. Paul Menard getting into the 41 of Reed Sorensen. It looked like they were the last two cars on track. I don't think there's anybody behind him. Fighting for 42nd place, and they both crash. Imagine that. Well, this is interesting. We're going to stay out. I'm assuming everybody else stayed out also. Our crew chief didn't say that they pitted. I don't know what the fuel window was going to be to make it on 2 stops. And here's the restart. We lose the lead on the restart. I'm hoping I don't lose it to Tony Stewart at the very least. Big block to the top of the racetrack, and Boyer loses the bottom to Aaron Crocker. But it was better than having the driver second in points, try to get some bonus points for leading a lap, and Boyer with the crossover in turn 3, as Crocker may not be able to get her first lap led this time either. Boyer's clear, back off turn 4 again. Wasn't the greatest restart, but we held on one way or another. It's probably going to be like that all day today. That bit me in Chicagoland, too. We had 2 cautions in the last 20 laps. That was the last mile-and-a-half track we were on. It was us and Stewart, but we had a couple late yellows, and including a green-white checker right at the end, and I had nothing to try to hold on. And we ended up finishing 4th. Despite leading the most laps. Yeah, especially with Trevor Lawrence out. I didn't realize he was out until watching the highlights before the Thursday night game. Or Sunday night game last night, my bad. I don't know why I said Thursday night. Yeah, my one league, we don't have an IR spot, which really sucks. Because we only have 5 reserves, too, so you can't really afford to hang on to them, even if they're only out for like 3 or 4 weeks or something. Especially if you already have a couple players on a bye as it is anyway. I mean, there's not even enough reserve spots for each position. Like, I only have 1 quarterback on my team, it's C.J. Stroud. That's why I'm kind of rolling with him, and there's nobody else with him struggling that I can get another quarterback in that league. And Drake May was out there a couple weeks ago, and he put up, like, back-to-back 20-point games. But then the next game, he had single digits again, and I'm like, man, it's just, I don't trust him. I don't trust New England's offense either. Like, he does that a couple weeks. Who's to say he's going to do that again? I think he actually did have a good game. I don't think it was this week, the week before. I don't know what kind of numbers he put up this week. I don't even know if he was still out there on free agency, but I remember him being there a couple weeks ago. I'm going to need a quarterback at some point sometime soon anyway, because Houston still has to get through their bye week yet. And I'm not going to have a quarterback that week, so at some point I am going to have to pick up somebody. At least for a week. That week can be brutal. Well, Tony Stewart kind of slipped back on this restart. We were just able to hold him off from getting to the lead, and obviously Aaron Crocker's in second, holding up with us just like she was before, but Stewart's now nowhere to be found. Brian Vickers is the 3rd place car. Blue car of some sort in 4th. I don't know if that might be the pole sitter Jimmy Johnson back there, but Stewart's not in the top 4. And he's not in picture of the lead as of right now. As Boyer continues to lead laps. All but the first 2 have been led by this 2 car. And nobody pitted during that first caution. at lap 15. So everybody's still on the same set of tires that we started this race off with. Moss from Cincinnati. Talk about Zach Moss. Yeah, actually, I picked up Chase Brown. He scored a touchdown like 1 week, and then I was like, I kind of need a running back. I forget who I had at that time, but I dropped because they were out for a while. But he's honestly the best free agent pickup I've had, because ever since I picked him up, he's literally scored a touchdown every week. Like 4 weeks in a row, I think he scored a touchdown now, and I picked him up after the first week of that streak. In the last 2 weeks, he scored me quite a few points. He had 120 rushing yards, not this weekend, but the weekend before that. This week he had a great game, too. Tire limit, NASCAR 08. It's going to be dependent on the race length. A lot of the Busch Series races will probably end up doing like 3 or 4 sets, and then Cup races 4 or 5. It depends on how long the race is. I don't want to do that on the seasons that we have going right now. I did the tire limits back when I ran NASCAR Heat 5. Especially because nowadays they do have tire limits more so than in yesteryear. But I like the fun strategy part of that. Because you'd have some of the AI pitting and some of them wouldn't pit. Had to pick and choose exactly when we were going to pit for tires. Makes me have to think more, makes it more interesting throughout the race. I think I see Tony Stewart in 5th. It appears that that's his old Spice car back there. 96 days until the Daytona 500. Yeah, it's too many. At least the Bowman Gray race is going to be even before that, 2 weeks before the 500. Be here before we know it. Yeah, it seems like the off-season goes by quick out of the gate, and then once you get through the holidays and into the new year, I feel like January is always the slow part of the off-season. You know, you're busy with family stuff. Christmas is around the corner, and obviously Thanksgiving to get to in a couple weeks. Just a lot of things going on. I feel like this part of the off season usually goes by, you know, all right and pretty quick. But yeah, you get into January, it could drag. Byron didn't have the car to win. Yeah, it was all Penske. Honestly, the way the race played out yesterday was about exactly how I thought it would. And I knew it was going to be tough for either Logano to pass Blaney or Blaney to pass Logano, depending on the circumstance late in the race. And Logano was able to beat Blaney to the lead on the restart. And ultimately, that was the end. Never got another caution. Tried to line up at least side by side with him. And once he caught Joey, I think he had a little bit better of a car, but not substantially better enough considering they were in the same equipment that he just couldn't get alongside of him. Honestly, the more I see it, and I can't remember if I actually stated this at the end of the stream yesterday, but the more we see Joey Logano in these situations where he doesn't have the car or somebody behind him may have fresher tires, he's got to be the hardest guy to pass in NASCAR history. Like Ryan Newman was always known for being like a kidney stone to try to pass. Or it was harder passing Ryan Newman than a kidney stone, I think was always the saying. What does that make Joey Logano? Because I swear we see him in this situation so many times, especially in recent years. I mean, that 2020 Kansas fall race. Even Nashville on the late restart earlier this year when he had way older tires compared to Reddick, and Reddick was like right there as they worked themselves off before coming to the white. He still couldn't get around him. Seen it on super speedways before too, where guys have a run, he's just able to block, make the right blocks, win the race. Obviously this weekend at Phoenix, it's the best mirror driver in NASCAR history. Like, Chastain's pretty tough to pass too, but Joey Logano is able to find himself in these kinds of positions more often, I feel. And I mean, that's where he thrives. He's like one of the few drivers who can play defense with stock cars as better than anybody that I've ever remembered. $12 tire advantage. Well, he didn't really have a tire advantage. Like, technically, well, on the last run, they all pitted during the caution anyway, so there definitely wasn't a tire advantage there. And then during the green flag pit cycling, when he was pressuring him before the caution came out in the last stage, he had like a 1-lap tire difference. It's more the fire off when they first come out of the pits, having that lap pressure tire. After a lap or two, it's pretty much even. You know, 1 lap's not going to do much, especially at Phoenix, because there isn't a whole lot of tire degradation there compared to some of the other tracks. Like, if it was a Homestead, 1 lap would be quite more substantial, and you could probably get away with running like 5+ laps on a 1-lap tire differential and making it worth that much more. A lap or two, and they're pretty much even. Once you get that heat cycle in it. Family plans for Thanksgiving? I'm not entirely sure yet. I think we're going over to my aunt's house again, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if she's having it on Thanksgiving or if it's going to be the day before, because it was the day before a couple years ago. I don't know what her work schedule looks like. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure on what we're doing, but I would imagine that that's the route we'll go again. We've had it at my aunt's house the last few years. Technically, it'd be my great aunt, because it would be my mom's aunt, but they're not that far off in age. Well, Tony Stewart's slowly climbing back through the field again. And Tony Stewart up to 3rd. Didn't really even see him in the top 4 there for a minute, and then I saw that he had passed Brian Vickers, and now he's going for 2nd on Aaron Crocker. We're past halfway through the field run. I wonder what that caution does for us, if it makes it possible that we can make this race on 2 stops. So again, obviously we stayed out. Everybody else pretty much did also. I don't know that I'm going to make an adjustment, because this car feels fine at this point in the run. I have zero clue how old she is, to be completely honest. I doubt she's that old. Because I think her daughters are around 30. And I don't think she had kids that late. Because my mom's only 43, I think. She was 18 when she had me. They're probably in their 50s. But she's not that much older than my mom. Because she's like one of the youngest in that side of the family too. My great aunt, technically. Like, I think some of the older siblings in that family, because there were 6 of them, I think some of them are in their 60s, but I don't think she is. I think she's one of the youngest. Well, Stewart got to 3rd, and then he fell back to 4th. Is that Ryan Newman? Behind us, it's either Ryan Newman or the 180 of Hans Good. I'm colorblind, so I can't tell if that's blue or purple. Might have to help me in the chat. We'll know if they get closer, and then I can see the sponsor on the hood. These PS2 graphics, a little tough for me to tell. Sponsorship. They're not right on my back bumper either. They're getting there, though. Whoever it is, they're closing in on us. And they're flying. And it does look like Hans Good. I'm going to go with the 180. Chastain. It's not Chastain. Yeah, it's definitely the 180. I could see 3 numbers on the driver's side door as he was looking to the outside on the front stretch. I'll give him the outside. Unless he actually gets close to my right rear corner panel, then we'll probably have to go and take that away from him too. But he just kind of out of nowhere started creeping in. Try to take this fuel run as long as we possibly can. I definitely don't think we're going to be able to make it to lap 66, 67 to make it on 2 stops, because even if we did, we had 3 caution laps in that stretch as well. So we pretty much need about another caution or 2 each run. If it would have came out a little bit later, I would have definitely considered pitting, but lap 15 just seemed a bit too early for me. And I'm glad I stayed out, kept the track position, because it seems like everybody else stayed out also. So we're all still in the same strategy. I have no idea who the oldest person that I know in my family. Because, like, my grandpa, oh man, he's probably in his 70s, I think. And most of my family is pretty young. And I know, like, my great-grandparents, none of them are alive anymore, so it's all my grandparents. My grandpa the oldest? I mean, I'm sure he is, but he's in his 70s. Like, he's not... Like, he's still coherent. He's not senile, so that's... that makes any sense. He hasn't completely lost it yet. I say he's like 74. I don't know what year he's born. Obviously, if I knew, I'd be able to do the math, but I don't know what year he was born. Because he retired, like, right around when I stopped racing. I think he was retired for maybe a year or 2. And I stopped racing when I was 19. So he was probably 65 when he retired, so 67 plus 6. So yeah, maybe 73 then. Somewhere around there. I'm going to guess anywhere between 72 to 74. That's assuming that he retired at 65, because he might have retired a year or 2 later. I really don't know for sure. 19. Well, yeah, but I don't know if he's like actually 73. I'm just guessing. I can see a little damage that right rear corner panel, Paul Menard, from his incident. And he's definitely slow following the crash as he's going to go lap down. And if you look at the track map, it's going to be a long time before we catch anybody else. Stewart's still battling for third with Aaron Crocker, but in the picture for the lead. Hans Good's really the only one putting any sort of major pressure on us. We got kind of a four-car breakaway here compared to the rest of the field. And if we didn't get the caution on lap 15, we'd be even more spread apart than we were. Or are. No, I'm not getting Logano. You know, I might get it from my sister, because that's my sister's favorite driver, but she doesn't really, like, follow NASCAR. Like, if I didn't tell her anything, she'd have no idea Joey Logano is the champion this year. The last 2 years we went to Michigan, she hasn't even gone either, because she's been working, so she's worked that weekend. So I have, yeah, she has no clue what's going on. That'd be the only way I would buy any sort of Logano merch. Tony Stewart's going to be the first car to pit road. That's pretty big. So Stewart's the first car into the pits. That could cycle him to the lead when everything cycles through. I think for that reason, I'm going to pit this lap so I don't give up too much time to him. I know I could go a couple more laps on fuel, but at least I won't give the lead up to him on the short side of things. We're racing for a championship with the 33, so we got to stay on similar strategy as him. He's going to pit one lap before us, but I'm going to try to mitigate the amount of time lost. Got a lot of cars on pit road right now. All right, we need a quick stop. The 2 is in. Mom is obsessed with Chris Buescher. Yeah, my mom was a Kevin Harvick fan. She hasn't picked a new driver yet. Even though we all went to Michigan this year, she couldn't decide. She didn't know about Josh Berry because I told her that he wasn't even going to be in the 4-car again next year, so she's still undecided. And Carson Hocevar is like the more localist driver to us, and he's young, so she was kind of thinking about him too, but I don't think she's actually decided. Well, no idea exactly where Tony Stewart may be on the racetrack. The hope is that Clint Bowyer cycle out ahead of him, but it's tough to tell for sure. Again, he did pit one lap before. I'm not sure interval-wise how far back he may have been as well. There's Brian Vickers, and he was behind us. Well, we know it's definitely a 3-stop race then. Even with the caution, when there was no chance we were going to be able to stretch it and make it on 2. So at some point, we're going to have to pit 2 more times. That was an aggressive move down towards the apron. Got pretty loose trying to work our way underneath the 22 car of Kenny Wallace. Not trying to waste any time with these fresh tires. Crocker in the pits now. Not a fan, just loves him. Same thing. She from Prosper, Texas. One of 30,000. always talk about Prosper, Texas whenever they talk about Chris Buescher all the time. I think Tony Stewart's going to cycle to the lead. I think I see the 33 car ahead of the 180 and the 98. We're going to fall back to, looks like, fourth when everything cycles through. Yep. He didn't lead that lap at the line because I think Marvin Sheth on pit road in the 192 car was ahead of the start-finish line. But I don't think Stewart's going to get past coming to the line this time. Got a couple car length gap back to Hans Good. So Tony Stewart going to lead for the first time today. I did what I could. I mean, I pitted one lap behind him. I had a feeling he was going to cycle in front of us, and I was just hoping that maybe there would be a chance I could still get in front of him, but that was not the case. 1.3 seconds back now. Good strategy call by him, being the first into the pits. Catching up to Hans Good and Aaron Crocker. Good maybe a little bit better on the longer run side of things. Hook to the white line, a little contact. The 98 car. Oh, and more contact. I think Hans Good got into the back of Aaron Crocker on that high lane off turn 4. He was sideways. He might have even got against the fence. I overdrove the entry to 3 there. Manager of the year, there we go. He might be a little biased, but he would have been my pick. Cool to see. I mean, he took a team of nobodies and Tarek Skubal to the division round of the playoffs, divisional series. We're blocking all the way to the inside. And shaking back and forth in the tri-oval. Can a run be built up enough to try to get underneath him? He's pulling his inner Joey Logano on me. He's making that thing wide. Gonna get underneath him this time. Center of the corner. Stewart going to run him tight, still side by side for the lead on the front stretch. Lap led that time by Boyer. Still side by side entering turn 1. Little contact. And the 33 car goes a bit wide after the fact. And Boyer is clear off turn 2. Well, he did lead for a little bit, but we're still going to be in control to try to get the most laps led in this race, so that's good. As long as we continue on and continue to lead this race. I think we can go about 60 laps, give or take a few, on a full tank. So if we end up getting a caution within 120 laps to go, I'm definitely going to pit. And then from there, just assume we only have to pit one more time after that. Missed Friday's race because of a high school football game. Well, I mean, you didn't miss much, considering that Ty Majeski just flat out dominated. Led all but 18 laps, 132 of 150. I do think we have the fastest car here. The more we drive around, it seems like they're having a very hard time trying to pass me. I can't pull away from them, but we get to the lead and car's comfortable enough, it's fast enough to just kind of hold it. Never gets us the win. Tyreek Hill's active. Thank you for that. Now I don't have to scramble to get him out of my line. Well, it doesn't matter because I have him. Everybody else has already played. I'm going to have to play him regardless of the fact. But, yeah, I didn't even know it was going to be that close of a call. They were expecting him to play, but they did that about Deebo Samuel 2 weeks ago when he had leukemia, or not leukemia. I keep getting that mixed up. Pneumonia. And he played like a couple snaps, and then that was it. I think that was the same week I lost when C.J. Stroud had the 3 points I was telling you guys about earlier in the stream. Like, if I could have taken him out and gotten somebody else in the lineup that same weekend, I might have actually been able to win that week. Assuming that Stroud would have scored more than 3 points. Good old fantasy football. You know what's wild is we could have 20 wins before the last race of the season if we continue to just pour it on here late in the season. And he could still have a mathematical shot at winning the championship into the season finale. Especially if he keeps running as well as he is right now in second, right there behind us. He's led some laps. So even if we get a max points day and he finishes second, we're only going to pull ahead 15 points on him. Unbelievable. Well, knowing that Tony Stewart already led for some laps, I can take this run as long as I can then. And try to get as close as possible to leading the most laps. You know, actually, we could probably lead the most laps even before we get to lap 120. I don't know how many laps I didn't lead for. I think got back to the lead at lap 70 or 71 on Tony Stewart. And I pitted at lap 58. So that, and then obviously the first 2 laps of the race, Jimmy Johnson led before I took the lead after starting 4th. I'd probably say I've led all but about 15, 16 laps in this race, if I had to guess. Obviously, our crew chief will give us the word when we've clinched the most laps led, and I think at that point we may short pit. So we can cycle back into the lead. Not have Stuart pit before us, unless, of course, it takes me that long to clinch the most laps led. Which could happen. High school football team hosts the district championship game. Like like that stadium hosted it, or your actual local team was playing in it? I think they host our districts at Bowling Green State University Stadium for my region. Bowling Green Falcons out of the MAC. Go by that stadium on the way to work every day. Right off of I-75. I mean, it's like right there. Like the parking lot's like right next to the highway. One of them. Stewart to the inside. Boyer cuts him off and holds on to the lead. He got to the left rear corner panel. Boyer was able to hold on. And you got Reed Sorensen nearly bouncing off the wall in the exit of turn 2. He was caught up in that first incident with Menard. Boyer couldn't clear the 41 car off turn 2. He should get him through 3 and 4. And does. And Tony Stewart on the high side stuck behind Sorensen all the way through the corner. So Stewart having a harder time trying to get by him than what Boyer did. And gives us about a 4 or 5 car length lead into turn 1. Should be getting halfway out of gas at any... Yeah, there it is. Right as I was talking about it. I'm going to say, just hit about 30 laps on the run. So we can go 60. We can go a clean 60. Probably looking at about lap 118. We'll end up hitting maybe 117 just to be safe. Considering I hit halfway out of gas on the back straightaway. I want to run out that early. Middle of 3 and 4 is alright, but back straightaway we'll be giving up a little too much time there.
Number 33, incoming high.
Hosen. Well, no major lap traffic around the leaders. The 2 cars we have caught so far, very spaced out. As well as everybody else that's going to be caught for the meantime, the 174. And they're all going really wide into that higher line near the wall. So giving us plenty of room to make the pass. Which isn't always the case, so it's greatly appreciated today. Wish they would just do that all the time. That would make it way, way easier for me. I mean, it's only the right thing to do. Especially if it's late in the race. Odd thing is later in the race, they seem to care more than earlier in the race. I feel like it should be the opposite, but alright. I will make sure I get the streaming schedule up on the channel as well by the end of the night. I'll do it while I'm watching the football game. I didn't get a chance to earlier. I've been busy all day today. Had to go grocery shopping. Stopped over at my grandparents for a couple hours. Raking leaves. At my parents' house.
Pays up. Not blocking like usual. The 109 car. Up high, up high. Number 109 is closing the gap. Okay, we're clear.
It definitely seems like Tony Stewart's taking a little bit longer getting through the lap cars. Has a hard time really trying to catch back up to that back bumper, the two of Boyer, after the fact. By the time he does, Boyer catches another car and is able to pass him much faster. It just seems like he goes to that middle upper line, kind of where the lap cars are running, rather than just taking the bottom that's wide open. They're getting out of my way, and then he's just running right in line behind him and getting in his own way. All right, about 6/10 of a second lead for now. Didn't make any adjustments to this car during the first stop. I don't plan on doing it on the second stop either. At some point, I am going to split the strategy up of when we pit, because if we just take this to, like, the end of the run both times, we're going to pit with a little over 20 to go. And I'm afraid that I'm going to cycle too far behind and not be able to catch him in enough laps. So that last run, I'll probably split it up. And try to cut it in half. Not to push as much on tires to the very end. Let's go like 40 laps or so, the full run. Take this one as far as we can go first, and then... or at least far enough to get to the most laps led. And then pit. That's before him, it's before him. It's a few laps after, and he cycles back in front of us. At least we've clinched the most laps led, no matter what happens the rest of the race after that. Still have to get through our 2 field passes yet today. We're almost halfway through the race. 2 laps away from the halfway mark. Right at lap 99. Oh, just got down to a quarter tank of gas left. If I don't clinch the most laps led before lap 117, we're going to pit at lap 117. If I clinch it before that, then we'll pit before that. Try to do our best to cycle back in front of the 33 of Stewart. That'll be our go-to plan for the second pit stop of the race.
But I guess you guys are friendly out there. No outside.
Not going to make any adjustments this time around, just like with the first stop.
Closing the gap. Looking to pass right. All clear.
I've noticed Kurt Busch running towards the back of the pack a lot recently. I don't know how he's still up towards the top 10 in points. I feel like the last few races he's been back here. I haven't lapped many cars in the race. Oh, and he's blocking. Boyer just ran his fastest lap of the day and just got cut off middle of the front stretch by the 39 of Kurt Busch. Boyer fights to get to the inside and passes him through turns 1 and 2, clear on the back straightaway.
Normally, you see him blocking right about now. The 125 car. High hot. Still there.
Oh, the next guy gave me plenty of room.
Way low on gas. Clear.
Get him. Get him.
Getting more room than usual here.
Case Mears got a big run on Danny Oakland Jr. Yeah, he's going to take the inside to get around him. Now he's moving up. All right, hey, I'll appreciate that. It's like, let me make my pass real quick, and then I'll get out of the way.
Got some more bonus points for
All right, there we go. And I just clinched the most laps led. I'll stay out one more lap just so Stewart can't tie us for it, even though I don't think he's going to lead the rest of the laps anyway. But we'll stay out this time, and then we'll pit the following lap. Try to short pit and maybe get back out in front of him this time versus him pitting before us like he did earlier. Just got to hope that he doesn't come down on the same lap. At that point, though, at least we'll be ahead of him. I don't know exactly how far ahead he was, because he was in third when we pitted the first time. Obviously, second place was like right on us, and there's a little bit of a gap back to him in third earlier. One lap, we were 1.3 seconds behind him, and he cycled to the lead, so he just had a quick stop because he beat us and he beat Hans Good. And Aaron Crocker, who was right around him in the running order. Try to be a little harder on entry this time. That was a perfect entry, by the way. That was a lot better than the one before that. I still probably could have pushed a little harder, but That's okay. I'll take that. Second stop of the race. All right. And Stewart's already led, by the way, so that's why I did give up the lead to him. We've just clinched the most laps led. A couple other cars on pit road right now, so I was the very first car to pit. See when Stewart pits. He doesn't pit that time. The longer he stays out, more of a chance we're going to be able to cycle back in front of him. We had about a 7/10 of a second lead over him when we pitted. But his pit crew was on it. Our pit crew's been on it too. I mean, our pit crew's made 2 good stops so far. Got a lot of clean air around us. That's also good. He's pitting. All right, so he pitted 2 laps before Tony Stewart. He's in the pits right now. We'll get back on the lead lap here. So if a caution were to come out, we are back in it. Hey, Stewart up there? I think it is. Dang it. Still beat us. Might have to pit a little bit earlier next time. 2 laps early and it still wasn't good enough. Definitely closer to him than what I was before, though, by doing that. It's definitely now 1.3 seconds. It's well under a second. Probably about a half a second right now, really. Took him a little bit to get by John Andretti in the 10 car. Big run by Boyer. Looking low. Side by side with Stewart. And clear before entering turn 1. Let's go. Aaron Crocker's still on the racetrack, by the way, and has not pitted yet. She leads her first laps of the race. Say, Boersed's leading right now, too. I don't think he's pit yet. Oh, Paul Menard's slow. Right in front of this group of cars. Man, he's off the pace. happened to Paul Menard?
There's some leaders coming in.
Got in the back of Jeremy Mayfield there a little bit.
Normally, you'd see him block you right about now.
All right, now we're back in the lead. 79 laps to go. About 1.4 seconds ahead of Tony Stewart. He's got a lot of lap cars in between us, too. Menard might slow him down a bit, considering he slowed us down a bit. Allowed me to get through a lot of those cars way quicker, though. Otherwise, it was probably going to take me a little bit. You probably told me that last week. I remember you saying you were painting something. I don't know if that was the same thing or not. One of the town's antiques caught on fire. Well, that's not good. Hopefully everybody was all right. Hopefully the building's okay too, so they can stay in business. That's got to be tough. There was a restaurant that my mom and my sister go to quite frequently a couple of years ago in Perrysburg, that one of the suburbs of Toledo, had caught fire. I don't know if it was a grill fire or exactly how it started, but yeah, I mean the whole place scorched. I don't know if they've honestly gone back into business or not yet. It's been at least a year, because it was like right after COVID too. Like as if COVID probably didn't hurt their business enough, and then that happens. That's tough. Three laps in a row that the two of Clint Boyers ran his fastest laps of the day. The lead has gone down a bit. It was about 1.3, 1.4 seconds over Stewart's, about 1.1 right now. Looks like it was destroyed. That's tough. Oh, 30.985. 4 laps in a row, the fastest of the race for Boyer. I didn't make any adjustments either, so this speed's kind of coming up out of nowhere. Ran a sub 31 second lap time today. .948. Big dive for Boyer underneath Biffle.
Don't forget, he's one of the good guys. Number 16.
Clear.
Right side. Whatever you need, you're clear. Down low.
Yeah, it was very windy where I live. Luckily, when I was raking leaves, it wasn't blowing the tarp everywhere. I think it died down quite a bit into the evening, though, because I didn't go out until a little later in the afternoon. So it was definitely well windier when I went grocery shopping earlier. It's been very windy in general around where I live for the last couple weeks. There was one day in particular, not last week, but the week before, I was walking out of my work at the end of the shift, and I about lost my hat. It was like one of those crosswinds, too, where it felt like I was kind of walking sideways, trying to get to my car. It was wicked. Then when I was in my car parked, it felt like the wind was heavy enough, like it was going to pick the car up and tip it over. Just blowing back and forth. Firmly grasp the door so it doesn't slam into the car next to you. As you open it. Light snow. Yeah, I haven't had any snow yet. Still been a little too warm. I don't know that we've had a day yet this fall that the high has been less than 40. I don't think that that's happened yet. We've had some overnight lows around freezing, but not as high temperatures the following, like during the day. Yeah, it's definitely been abnormally warm. Because our first snowfall last year was on Halloween. That I remember specifically, but yeah, we haven't had anything yet this year. First snowfall wasn't until after Christmas. Wow. I'm surprised considering you live more north than I do. It's just we just get that lake effect though. That I live too close to Lake Erie. I'm glad I don't live any closer though. If I lived any closer, being some of those areas where just randomly get like 8 inches just falling right on your lap in one day, yeah, no thanks. Just far enough away that we get some of it, but not all of it. Thank goodness. I would have moved if that was the case. Didn't ice skate last winter. Lived by Lake Superior. Yeah, that's shocking you didn't. Not even that it was after me, the fact that it was that long after me. Getting a snow that late in the year, like the first one, I should say. Well, we've got an RCR car out of the race. Looks like Kevin Harvick's got the old red X. Tough break for him. Still haven't gotten any of our field passes in yet. And it looks like we're just going to have to double down on the laps when we do it each time with Jeff Burton. Not Jeb Burton. Jeff Burton. Our old NBC broadcaster. You know what I just realized? This entire season, all 3 of these guys on RCR and the Busch Series and NASCAR 07, they're all commentators right now. What are the odds of that? You got Harvick in the Fox booth, you got Jeff Burton in the NBC booth, and you got Boyer in the Fox booth. That's actually pretty wild. All teammates at one point in time, and now all commentators on major sports networks that bring you NASCAR every weekend. It only took 30 races for me to figure that out. Football player named Jeff Burton. I remember when I was stumbling through Madden 06 a couple years ago. Like randomly in the middle of the winter, I was playing Madden 06 and I was starting a franchise mode, but I was going to do a fantasy draft. I stumbled across apparently the punter for the Cincinnati Bengals at that time. His name was Kyle Larson. Looks nothing like our NASCAR driver, Kyle Larson, but I just found that kind of funny. I always remember Tony Stewart playing for Carolina. There's Tony Stewart that was a tight end for Carolina back in the day at that time. But I didn't know that there was a Kyle Larson that happened to be a punter for Cincinnati as well. There's very few guys that were punters that I could actually remember their name, but yeah, I definitely did not know that one. And Kyle Larson and Tony Stewart in the NFL at the same time. Football player named Keegan Schneider. There's I think there was one that played for Iowa some time ago. Because I remember we had to do this thing when I was in high school. It was some project. We basically had to find somebody. It was a way of like using the internet or whatever. But one way or another, we were in middle school, and you had to find out like how many people in the world like had your name, first name, last name, and then like the full name. And I remember one of the people that had the full name, Keegan Schneider. They were a football player at the University of Iowa at the time. I don't think he ever made it in the NFL. I feel like if I did, I definitely would have bought that jersey. It's you, though. It's not me. He was definitely older than me. Like, he was in college at the time, and I was in middle school. So he'd probably be in his 30s now. Iowa Hawkeyes. Well, we've definitely really opened up this lead. 2.5 seconds, about 56 laps to go. We're in the final fuel window whenever we decide to pit. Pit at lap 112. So 88 laps to go and we cycle out. We'll go 44 and 44. So I'll pit with 45 laps to go. We'll have 44 laps on the last set of tires. Split the final run in half. And take ourselves to the checkered flag from there. We'll take our first field pass at the start-finish line this time by. Actually, I'll do it next lap. So we're catching up on Paul Menard again. Yeah, so Menard was slow after his first crash. And then at some point, he just got even slower. Because he was not this slow the first time I caught him. Now he's like way off the pace. Even more so than the first time we had passed him during this long green flag run. We've gone over 130 laps since the restart of our lone caution we've had in this race. All right, well, Jeff Burton's a lap down in 16th. So we'll go our 4 laps with him. Transfer back to Boyer, and then we'll take our final field pass later in the race when everything cycles back through again. Or we just take them both before we pit, I guess. Either or works for me. $50 to go. Well, 49 technically, considering Jeff Burton's a lap down. Yeah, I was named after local sprint car driver, actually. Coincidentally, obviously, you know, racing's in my blood. But his last name was Keegan. And there was a few of them that raced. I think he ran in the All-Star Series at the time. Now it's Kyle Larson owns that series. It's called the High Limit Series, but it's kind of Midwest-based, basically. Midwest dirt track racing, but he was from a town very close to where I lived, and parents thought that that was a cool name at the time, so it was just a last name, but they used it as my first name, obviously, so. That is where I was named after. Jonah, it's not Jonah. It's my dad's. That's where I got my middle name. We both have the same middle name. How original. .8-second lead. Yeah, we're just going to get this final field pass out of the way then, instead of pitting this time by. Then we'll pit. Hit by Paul Menard again. Dale Jr. to the outside. Got held up off turn 4 by Menard. And Boyer clears the Oreo 8 car. I mean, the fact that you're guessing with a J, you're on the right track.
Alright, consider it done. Watch the outside. Clear.
Well, Jeff Burton picked up a spot somewhere recently because he was 16th. Got to 15, just past Ron Hornaday for 14th. It's got to be close to the free pass position. Dale Jr. is probably the first car lapped down after he had got lapped by Clint Boyer. Like I just got, I'm not going to tell you if you're right or wrong. I will say you haven't gotten it yet, but disclosed information.
Number 41. There you go.
Oh, jeez, what am I doing down there? Trying to get Jeff Burton in front of Tony Stewart. Stewart's blocking the 21. We're not even racing for position, Tony. Come on. Get another buffer car between Stewart and Boyer. Little wiggle, but clear. And out in front of Tony Stewart. And Junior got right back around the two of Boyer. Boyer going to try to sneak back to the inside again. Oh boy, little contact. We're good. Already know your middle name. Yeah, I saw that. It doesn't mean I'm giving mine up. I don't want my whole identity out on the internet, you know? All right, we're going to short pit with Boyer this time by. The lead's down to 1.3 seconds. It was as much as about 2.8 to 2.9 seconds during the run. Gone a little bit past where we needed to split it in half. It would have been 44 and 44. By the time we exit pit road, we're only going to have 37 laps on our final set of tires. So the plan will be to pit this time. And that was a solid pit road entry. That was even better than before. I look like a John. Sizey, thanks for tuning in. Tweeted right before Blaney caught Logano. Blaney's best long run driver in the sport. Just for him to choke at the end. Well, he didn't choke. He had the best car, but it wasn't by a long stretch. Oh, geez. That was a hard hit, by the way. I heard somebody grunted after that hit. A little collision with the rear tire changer and the fuel man. Did you guys hear that? It was like, ooh. Sounded like it was a soundbite from the Madden games. Considering it is EA Sports, it's not impossible. $5,000,000% choked. Running the outside. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. I don't think he choked. It was going to be hard to pass him. I feel like that word is overused. And I'm not saying that in defense of my favorite driver. I feel like in any sport, when somebody loses, I feel like the easy thing for most people, generally speaking, to do is to say, like, oh, that team choked. Or, like, everybody's got opportunities to win a game. When the game starts, the game's all tied. So, you know, at some point, somebody is going to have to get the upper hand. And the team that makes the least amount of mistakes is usually going to win. You know, that's just a part of sport, you know, in general. And that's the case with NASCAR, too. The biggest mistake I think Blaney would have made that costed him a chance to win was just not having as good of a restart as Joey Logano. They were both back in a similar situation on the last restart. Logano got to the lead so much faster than Ryan Blaney got to settle in fourth, and it was just too much time to overcome. And he got to within a couple tenths of a second, but he never had a chance to get alongside Joey Logano. Logano was just good enough, and being in equal enough equipment, it was going to be tough for Blaney to make the pass on Joey. He was significantly quicker than everybody else he had gotten around to that point, just as Joey was with everybody else that he had gotten by on the restart. You know, it just wasn't meant to be. I don't blame him for going to the outside. I think it would have been actually easier to pass going to the outside than the bottom, which is probably why he was trying to go to the top to begin with. We had seen passes a lot easier for somebody when they got to the outside of a driver because you can have a better straight line exit off the corner. So make a little contact there, Dilly Sadler. But You get underneath the car, you're kind of pinched off a little more, corner exit. You can't get back to the gas as soon as what you would want. Ran on the outside with the 5. Lost an insane amount of ground. Yeah, I think he was probably driving it in a little too deep to run the outside lane of the racetrack. His car probably wasn't as good up there as it could have been, but if gripped up, I think the outside was the better line to make a pass. He was definitely rolling the bottom better, but the problem is Joey was protecting the bottom. So he was never going to pass him down there. Joey was doing what he had to do to win. I mean, he was putting himself in the best possible position, which is in the lead on defense. And I talked about it even earlier in the stream that he is the hardest driver to pass in modern day NASCAR, maybe even all time. He might be the hardest driver to pass in NASCAR history. Honestly, I think he could have been behind him for like 20 more laps. I wouldn't guarantee that he would have eventually passed him, to be completely honest. Because they were that equal. He was faster than him, but it was by a minuscule amount. When he had first gotten into second place, I think he was a little less than 2.5 seconds off the lead. Can't remember exactly what lap it was that he had gotten to second before he had closed it within a couple tenths behind Joey Logano. It took a long time to get there. He was like maybe a tenth quicker lap, but a tenth quicker lap isn't really enough with this car, and especially at this track because it was a flatter racetrack. We've seen how much grip that the next-gen cars have at these shorter tracks compared to prior cars. Lesser horsepower, more mechanical grip. To make up that extra time needed, your car has to be significantly better than somebody else. And again, just coming out of the same shop, it was never going to happen. And honestly, I think if Joey Logano was in a similar situation to that of Ryan Blaney, if he had a slightly better long-run car, Blaney was the one in the lead, I think it would have been the same scenario. He would have gotten close to him, and it would have been very hard to get around him because the difference in just overall car at that point in the run just wasn't enough. Honestly, the picture of the finish of the race, honestly, for me, and how the race went as a whole, coming down to those two like that, exactly how I drew it up in my head. I just had the 12 in front of the 22 for that long run because of the consistency that the 12 had throughout the course of the season was better than the 22, especially on the shorter, flatter ovals. Tony Stewart finally pitting. Oh, boy. Almost turned myself. I chopped down a little early on that 119 car. So Stewart's in the pit. We'll see where he cycles. We'll see where we will cycle. We were 1.3 seconds ahead of him. I would imagine we'll cycle back out to the lead. Well, the difference at Martinsville, he was roughing guys up. Every pass he made at Phoenix was definitely clean. I don't remember him making contact with anybody. Martinsville, like Larson, he was beating him up. He didn't even give Larson a chance to try to play defense. Phoenix a little bit faster of a racetrack, so he couldn't have necessarily raced that same way. Found extra grip. Well, the extra grip was the 8 wheels turning better than 4 at Martinsville. And then Larson sent him to the next corner and actually got back around him, and then Blaney hit him again, got around him the second time, and if Larson had a chance to get there, I think he was going to ship him again. At that point, once he got in front of him, he was too quick. Drove away. past cars that was equal to him. Well, the thing is, they weren't equal to him, though. Maybe earlier in the run, but he obviously, as soon as he pulled past them, eventually, he had pulled away from them, which is a clear indication that he was better at that point in the run. I will say it took him a little bit longer on the early side of things to put lap times up that Logano was, which is probably why Joey was able to get to the lead on the restart. But Joey's a great restarter, too. And I will say, I don't really think of Ryan Blaney as being like one of the better restarters in the Cup Series. I've seen him in situations before leading front row in a restart and he loses a spot or two coming to the finish. It is usually long runs and catching up towards the finish where he gets these wins, unless it's a super speedway, you know, that'd be the outlier side of things there. Oh boy. Almost got against the fence there. Ripping the boards, as Jeff Burton would say. 20 laps ago, easily cycled ahead of Tony Stewart. Aaron Crocker still has to pit. But she's definitely not going to make it. Once she pits, we'll be back in the lead. And it'll probably be smooth sailing from there as long as we stay green. Jesus, Paul Menard. I sailed it into that corner. That 11 car was so slow on the bottom. He was trying to pit, apparently. John Andretti was stuck behind him. Yeah, I mean, that definitely helps with pulling away for sure. Obviously, you're able to run a traditional racing line because you're not really able to run the racing line as you're passing somebody, which is what makes just passing, you know, difficult, as you mentioned, in general. For sure, that is a part of... That definitely is a part of it. Got 11 likes on the stream. Be sure to hit the like button if you haven't done so yet. Just cycled back to the lead. 7.3 seconds ahead of Tony Stewart right now. Largest lead of the day for Clint Boyer. And our only caution was all the way back on lap 15 with Paul Menard and Reed Sorensen. Since the incident, Paul Menard has been pretty slow. Caught him quite a few times, but he is still on the track. Had a few engine failures in the race. We're just hoping it stays green to the finish at this point. Get me to that white flag, please. I definitely don't want to see another restart. So I don't fire off very well. And that's exactly what bit me at Chicagoland in the last mile and a half track where I led the most laps and dominated and we pretty much had the win in the bag. We had 2 cautions in the final 20 laps. I held on for the first one and not the second one with the green-white checker, so... It's what we need. I didn't pit that much earlier than everybody else as well. So the tire differential really isn't much. We go green long enough, they'll probably even out closer to the end of the race anyway. This will be the third win in a row for Boyer. Get a win at his home track if he can hold on. Still extending the lead, lap over lap. 10th or 2 quicker the last couple laps than Stewart. Definitely had the fastest car of the race. Third mile-and-a-half track win of the year as well. We can hold on for the Busch Series season. It's 3 more than it won on the truck side. Truck side, I didn't win a single one. I would assume Tony Stewart is still in second place. He's been there for a large majority of the race, really ever since the first pit stop of the race under green. We've had 3 of them during this run. I wasn't sure what lane he was going to pick. He chose the bottom at the last second the last time I caught him. He was kind of right in the middle. Went to the top at the last second. I was about to try to pass him up high until he swung up to the outside. Well, I appreciate your comment on that. I do think there are a lot of fans that are overly negative. I think it's a people thing. Honestly, I don't think it's just a NASCAR fan thing to be complete. I'm not blaming it on like NASCAR fans. You know, I don't blame them for being frustrated with the points format the way it is anyway, and Logano winning. But I do feel like people are just, in general, tend to be more overly negative about stuff. I mean, that's the internet for you, because you can voice your own opinion and you don't have to face any repercussions of it. But even I obviously understand, you know, where people are coming from. Clearly, like if I had to pick a points format, it definitely would be the format that we currently have. But at the same time, as far as the questioning and holding champions to higher regard, and saying like, God, Joey Logano isn't a 3-time champion. Like, the stats are stats. Like, I'm a huge history nerd with the sport, with any sport for that matter, but especially NASCAR. I've always been a stats nerd. It's what's drawn me into commentating. Like, I've wanted to do it ever since, you know, I knew I wasn't going to be able to race, essentially, into my adult years and stuff, because I did race growing up, and that's where I wanted to turn to, and that's what I started the channel on. So stat piling and stat padding and stuff, that's, I don't know, I'm a nerd about that stuff. Joey Logano is a 3-time champion. I mean, that's the facts. You know, I hate that people don't hold it in the same regard. I understand the argument of why they don't, but if I just stopped, you know, if I started discrediting people for not winning the championships they got, you know, at that point, it's like, well, I guess Jimmy Johnson isn't a 7-time champion. And a lot of people largely consider him a Mount Rushmore driver in NASCAR history. It's like, by that same logic, then you're saying he's not, because he didn't win 7 championships. You know, how many would he have won, like, full season points format? Wasn't it like 4? 3 or 4? Maybe 5? I think it's like 3 or 4. But I don't know. It's just, yeah, people are going to race differently under different formats. It changes the whole complexion of things. It really does. I mean, especially nowadays with like the stage racing, just think about flipping the stages for stage points. If the playoffs weren't a thing, every single road course, we would not be seeing people flipping stages for stage points and wins. It just, if the playoffs weren't a thing, they definitely wouldn't be doing that. Like, that alone changes the outcome of, what, 6 races every season? I mean, that's why only 2 playoff drivers finished in the top 10 at Watkins Glen towards the beginning of the playoffs, because you had 16 guys that were only going for stage points. They weren't going for the win. They needed the points. That's what led... You know, SVG was fast enough. He definitely still could have been up there. Chris Buescher wouldn't have been up there. He didn't qualify anywhere near the front. He cycled ahead because everybody was... Like, it changes the complexion of things. If he doesn't finish as high as he did there, then where he would have finished under a full season points format wouldn't have been as high because he wouldn't have won that race. He probably would have finished outside the top 10. Yeah, I mean, it changes the complexion of everything. So it's not comparable in my eyes for that reason, personally. Very little chance under a win and in situation that Joey Logano at Las Vegas was going to try to stretch it on fuel to the end of the race and try to go for the win. But he knew that that was his best chance to make it to the championship 4 because on 1.5 miles, he isn't as quick this year. And they were going to Homestead the next week, and look, he ended up running, like, what, outside the top 20 most of the day? Like, I mean, it changes the whole complexion of things, really. So I don't fault him at all for playing the system at all the way he did. It is what it is. Well, we got a win. Stayed green to the end. That was nice. It was very non-contested there towards the finish, but did a great job. Pat myself on the back. Good win tonight. Yeah, exactly. It is weird, too, because if you really think about it, like, best average finish this year, I think it was Chase Elliott. So a lot of people saying that, like, you know, oh, Kyle Larson should have been in the championship 4 because he was the best driver in every statistical category. Well, if we had a full season points format, him missing that one race this year, he wouldn't have won the championship anyway. So, like, I feel like that defeats the that argument at least. Like, you should have more of an argument of like a Chase Elliott or a Christopher Bell or whoever would have ended up. I don't know. It is skewed. I do think that there are a lot of Kyle Larson fans out there, which, you know, that probably is the reason why there were so many people for that argument side of things. I don't know. People argue over anything. I just don't like the argument. I'm tired of. I mean, I don't like it either, but I've always been a person not to complain about stuff. You know, I don't like drama. Which is probably why I don't like the points format as much. Like, there's I like drama in sports, but, you know, real world situations, like outside of the race in general, I don't like drama, and I just try to stay away from it as far as possible. So if I ever get asked about my opinions on stuff, I usually just, you know, I just don't care enough to, like, me talking about it isn't going to do anything, so I'm not going to get worked up about it. All right, 158 laps led, most laps led in the race. We're only going to get 15 points over Tony Stewart in this one because we outscored him by 5 bonus points, 10 in the positioning order. With him leading laps and finishing second, he led 22 laps. We did what we could here today. I mean, again, a win is the reason why we're going to extend the points lead, and that will put us 104 points ahead with 5 races to go. Matt Kenseth finished 3rd tonight. Elliott Sadler 4th. Kenny Wallace in 5th. Martin Truex Jr. in 6th. Brian Vickers led 1 lap, finishing 7th. Hans Good led 2 laps, finishing 8th. Ryan Newman 9th. Aaron Crocker led for 14 laps and finishes 10th. We had just 10 cars finish on the lead lap in our teammates tonight. 1 lap down for Jeff Burton in 15th. Kevin Harvick DNF with that engine failure. He ended up finishing 39th. We had quite a few Engine failures. Bernie Lamar, Paul Menard finished, but was down a cylinder. 50 laps down for him. Kevin Harvick DNF'd. C. Loggins DNF'd. R. Kennedy DNF'd. C. Erickson DNF'd. Kyle Busch blew an engine early in the race as well. So 6 drivers in total DNF. 8.4 second margin of victory. 162.53 mile per hour average race speed. And 1 hour, 50 minutes, 44 seconds total time on our race. 1 caution, 18 lead changes. That lone yellow is on lap 15. Make sure I mute the audio here. I'll blow your eardrums out with the music on the game menu. All right, going to Charlotte, Lowe's Motor Speedway tomorrow night. Same distance as tonight, 200 laps, 300 miles. And we'll be starting that at 7 p.m. Eastern tomorrow evening, by the way. So 7 p.m. Eastern, we'll go live for that one. Over 1,000 points ahead of third now. But only 104 over Tony Stewart second, so we still got a title fight. 5 races to go. He's very much in contention. We still got to stay on it. Got to continue to compete here these last 5 races. Hope everything goes our way. Stay out of trouble. And we can do that by qualifying well. So we're out of the middle of the pack. Start of the race. And just hope the cautions fall our way if we get any yellows in races. So, you know, the more we stay in the front, less it'll bang us. That's my philosophy, at least. I mean, you can't help if it's at a weird point at the edge of a pit window. You know, those situations could still hurt us, but we'll do the best with it what we can. We'll just worry about the things that are in our control. And try to keep him out for bleeding the lap, obviously. We've been able to do that in some races we couldn't. Today we couldn't. He short pitted that first run and was able to lead laps, and those were the only laps he led the whole day. So, got the 22. All right, thanks for everybody tuning in here tonight. Be sure to hit the like button again if you haven't done so yet. Subscribe for more daily NASCAR content. I will see you guys tomorrow night. Thanks for watching, everyone.